Ladies and gentlemen, seekers of light and secret knowledge wherever you may be, you are listening to Points of Light Radio, the podcast dedicated to taking you past the apron and behind the closed doors of lodges everywhere. And here is your host, Stan Miller.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Shalom, assalamu alaikum. It's wonderful to be back with you here again, as always, on Points of Light Radio. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? And we've learned a lot of new things. And we're going to continue that learning and that quest for the light in this particular segment of Points of Light Radio by shedding light on an order that I can almost guarantee you've never heard of it. And that order is the Knights of the Maccabees. Now, just to give you a little bit of insight into this organization, I'll start by saying, first of all, that I'm frankly amazed at the history and the explosive growth that the Knights of the Maccabees had very early on. The Knights of the Maccabees was founded in London, Ontario in 1878 by members of the Order of the Forsters. You can look into them. They're still around today as Order of Forsters is still around as kind of an insurance company as far as I know. But the Knights of the Maccabees based their names and ceremonies and rituals on the Maccabees. Now, the Maccabees was a group of Jewish rebels that fought against the Seleucid Empire, whose exploits are described in the Book of the Maccabees. And I encourage you to go have a look into that book. It'll really give you an insight into some of the Maccabees' rituals and so on. Now, the motto of the Knights of the Maccabees was the Latin phrase Astra, Castra, Numen, Lumen, which means the stars, my camp, the deity, and my light. I like that. I really do. That sounds really good, right? Now, the order had a 3-degree structure. First degree was degree of protection, second was the degree of friendship, and the third was the degree of loyalty. The Knights of the Maccabees grew rapidly in Canada and several U.S. states, and they reached 10,000 members by 1880. Think of it, in 2 years, they went from 0 to 10,000, right? By 1920, the Ladies Auxiliary, named the Ladies of the Maccabees, claimed more than 200,000 members. Amazing, there were more women in the Knights of the Maccabees than there were men, right? But over the course of the 1900s, the Knights of the Maccabees lost members and ceased to exist as a fraternal order. Now, in recent years, there have been efforts to resurrect the Knights of the Maccabees, and my guest is part of those efforts. My guest for this segment of Points of Light Radio is Aaron Rasmussen-Bates. Mr. Rasmussen-Bates is a Knight of the Maccabees in California. Now, I've been wanting to shed some light on the Knights of the Maccabees for over a year now, and I finally set up this interview. I'm quite excited about this, and I'm quite excited to meet someone who's trying to preserve a fraternal organization like I've been trying to preserve fraternalism here on Points of Light Radio. So this is going to be intriguing as well as informing. So let's go talk to this gentleman knight. But are you still thirsty for knowledge? Are you still searching for the light? Well, then you just trim your lamp and follow me. Aaron Rasmussen-Bates, welcome to Points of Light Radio, sir. Shalom.
Shalom.
Yeah. You are a knight. You are actually a member of Knights of the Maccabees. You're also a knight of the Maccabees, shall we say. So why don't you tell my listeners and viewers about yourself?
Well, I was born in 1983 in Sonora, California, and when I graduated high school, I went into the military, and I spent just over 12 years in the U.S. Army, and then Um, if I went back a little bit, 2009, I became Torah observant out of Christianity. And then about 2018, when I was researching Hanukkah and the Maccabees, is when I came across the old order of Knights of the Maccabees. And being in the military and just having a love for history, I started researching it and getting involved in it, collecting artifacts, and it's because I just love the idea, right? Um, so it is a lost order, and for me personally, I'm bringing it back in my own personal life, and since it's a lost order and it's not really formed, I don't know what the future will be, but I know it is. It's held. The history is held with me at this point.
Okay. But like I said, you're trying to resurrect the Maccabees. How's it going so far? Is any of your inquiries, are they generating any interest in it, shall we say?
No, I think there's little to no interest that I've seen um, anywhere, and I'm not purposely or actively trying to make it big or seeking membership. I'm really just holding it in my life at this point, and how I do business amongst uh, society and so forth, my community.
We'll see if we can change that today. We'll see if we can't change that, raise some awareness of it. First of
Yeah,
all,
thank you.
what are the qualifications though to join?
Well, if we went by the old laws of the Knights of Maccabee, and again, we went back in the history. The Knights of the Maccabee fraternity started in 1871. The earliest bylaws that have come across is I have this one book here from 1891 and another book from 1895. Those are about the oldest, and those little bylaw books. At that time, when they first began in 71, it was an open, really like a life insurance fraternity.
It was.
It had the backdrop of the Maccabees and the story, and Judas Maccabee being their the one that they looked up to in history. But it was shortly in reading the history. There's a good book that I was able to come across, historical sketches of the ancient and modern Knights of Maccabee. Gives a really great biography from the beginning into the 20th century. The first few years, their membership grew over 10,000 really quick.
It did.
It was a very cheap insurance type of membership, and they soon realized that almost bankrupted them, and that kind of did, but they were able to bring it back, and then they really started forming themselves with proper bylaws and a business mindset to to for example, in order after a few years of just letting anybody in, they required a certificate of good health, and so that was the main requirement. It was a certificate of good health, and then you could be a part of the fraternity and the order, the brotherhood, and then we see it going through to the 1960s. They actually turned into a general mutual insurance fund. It says in some history write-ups is that they kept some fraternal ideology, but that was soon lost and just became a regular business by 1990s, mid 1990s. They were absorbed by a bigger insurance company. You see this strange but interesting history of, it began as a group of men wanting to get together and start the fraternity, and then you see it actually slowly but surely turn into a business over the 20th century, to where it's the paternalistic values of it just have disappeared that I can see.
And that's really what you're trying to resurrect, is that fraternal aspect of it, right? Now, I understand they do have a degree system, 3 degrees, if I remember correctly. Are you aware of those?
I'm similar, very little aware of them.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of in detailed. What I would say, like you could read the do's and how a meeting might go,
Yeah.
but I believe there's a lot of the handed down traditions that we're not going to have unless we actually find somebody that was in the order. But you're looking at somebody that's in 90s or 100s if we're lucky. Um, I am I have with the only other fraternity I'm mainly big in is the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and we have some auxiliary work that has degree work. Um, so in that aspect, I'm familiar with the different levels um, in that regard.
Okay. So now, why do you want to resurrect the Knights of the Maccabees? Why exactly do you want to do that?
In my mind, it's honoring religious history. I'm Torah observant. I'm Orthodox. I'm not Orthodox Jew, but I uphold the Torah. And Judas Maccabee is a focal point, one of the last and major points in Jewish history before the coming of Jesus Christ or Yeshua the Messiah.
Yeah.
The last hurrah of the Jewish people, and it wasn't about Orthodox Judaism. It was about following the Torah and not defiling ourselves, and having that strong of a value that you'll die for your faith.
Mhm. And of course, the brotherly love that goes with that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but you said when planning your knighthood with a fellow knight, you found that the Knights of the Maccabees summary from the Masonic records that shed some light and credibility of the order. What exactly did you see?
I saw that I actually for the first time saw how they conducted business,
Mhm.
and they we should appreciate the Masons for capturing that history because it would be lost. So having it in the Masonic record and having a record of how they conducted their opening ceremonies and membership, to me gave it credibility that this was legitimate fraternity that have once existed.
Well, there again, though, if you have that much, then you have a lot to go on right there. Some of the rituals may have been lost in your degree system, but if you have that much to work with, there's quite a bit there, which is good. Right now, you have been knighted, haven't you?
Yes, I was knighted in December 2019. It was 2018 is when I started when I came across the Knights of Maccabee and started collecting the artifacts and information. And a friend of mine in the VFW was as an actual knight of Saint Anne, and I asked him to help me be knighted under the Knights of Maccabee, and he actually was the one that went through the Masonic records to find some information for me.
Okay. Now, how did you go about getting knighted?
There's a general knighting ceremony that there's a symbolism in the knighting ceremony. Have you ever been knighted, or for those that have been knighted, there's three key aspects. When I got knighted, you have to have a sword, you have to have a chain, and you also have to have spurs, and those all represent different things.
Yeah.
And there's an oath that goes along with it. So that's a simple explanation of being knighted.
Okay. Now, was it done in person or done online? Done in a lodge? Done well?
It was actually done here in my home. Outside, I have a nice a brick area with the sunset, so we did it here, and it was actually, it's like, again, it's a very spiritual and personal endeavor, and not. And as I studied the knighthood, there's more to just you know taking an oath. There's night work that should be done, and I had already been doing, and that has to do with honoring the history and memory of our dead, taking care of widows and orphans and those in need. And that's focal for most knighthoods, as it is anyways in most fraternities. So there's those qualifications on a personal level that should be met as well.
So, but has anybody else been knighted that you know of?
Not on the Knights of Maccabees, I know.
Okay. Now, if someone wanted to join, how could they go about joining then?
At this point, I would encourage them to contact me, and we can start that dialogue and that conversation of
Okay.
what they would like to get out of the Knights of Maccabees and what their idea and vision is of it. One of the things that I'm bringing forward to the table is Torah observance, but you're not from the readings that I've read in the history books and the bylaws, they were not like religiously specific,
No.
for example. So to me, it's kind of odd, but at the same time, that's the kind of the Americanism. And when you look at Christianity, like Christianity believes in the Bible, but they don't adhere to a lot of the Mosaic laws and so forth. So you have this, this Jewish character that we're going to be calling ourselves, or we're going to be knighted under, and you have to hold true to some of those values. And one of the greatest points that I would bring up when you talk about the story of the Maccabees, there is ancient books that you can read, and I suggest Maccabees 1 and Maccabees 2, along with like the other books of Apocrypha. Those where those will be found. There's a inspiring story in Maccabees 2 goes into greater detail of a widow and 7 children, and from teenager to 2-year-old, and they were viciously killed by Antiochus. The tongues cut out, hands cut off, boiled in oil, all because they refused to defile themselves by eating pork. And that's part of the Mosaic laws of kosher. And when you think of like good health, when the organization is talking about you need a certificate of good health, there's no more better proven good health than the kosher lifestyle. And so it all kind of struck me as very important. We're going to be calling ourselves Judas, or the Maccabees. We should be following the values of Judas. And those aren't, whether you like them or not, they're being Torah observant.
Absolutely. And I am going to include your Facebook page there, your Knights of the Maccabees Facebook page, so that people can actually reach out to you and learn what it's all about. Like I keep saying, and I personally, I think it's great what you're doing, trying to recharter this organization. I really do. I mean, I encourage you. I really encourage you to double down on it, learn more about it, publish more material as well on your Facebook page, so that people can really learn what it's all about, because it is an organization with a very, very rich history and roots in Canada. By the way, I'm proud to say.
Yeah, roots in Canada, London,
up
Canada,
in Windsor, not far from where I grew up. So I think it's I think it's wonderful, and I hope that eventually you get it up and running. I hope eventually, if anything, you can start holding some online meetings with fellow knights. And if you send me some more of the some of the rituals and stuff like that, I might be able to help you compile some of that information, so that you can actually start forming lodges or castles or whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, that would be, that'd be amazing. I've never really thought really far into it, other than grabbing what I can as far as history wise and artifacts, and just preserving the history with myself, and sharing with people that I know. Be a lodge and actually have more membership. I mean, that would be amazing.
Hear it. Well, Mr. Rasmussen, I appreciate your time tonight and sharing this information about this the order there, and all the best to you in your endeavor, and all the best to you and your fellow Knights of the Maccabees. Shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you. That was Sir Knight Rasmussen-Bates, brothers and sisters, from the Knights of the Maccabees. Wasn't that interesting? Hey, did you learn anything? I know I did. Some things that I'll cover here are, first of all, I love that his goals are the same as mine: to preserve the history and raise the profile of this historic organization, right? If you notice that it wasn't just the conversation, it wasn't just an interview, I actually, it was more of an exchange of ideas as I tried to help him along in his efforts, because like I keep saying, that's what Points of Light Radio is here to do, right? I've been trying to raise the profile and preserve the history of these organizations. Now, this is an organization that started, like I said, in 1878 and just exploded within 2 years. And of course, like I said, by 1920, the women's auxiliary part of the Knights of the Maccabees was actually larger than the men's organization. And I like I said, that was interesting, right? But this is a historic fraternal order, right? Their history may date back to 1878, but the esoteric part of the organization itself goes much further back than that, right? And if you're out there and you know something about the Knights of the Maccabees, I've included the link to the Knights of the Maccabees Facebook page in the detail segment of this podcast. In this particular, and I'm also, you can also get in touch with me via my Facebook page, right? And I can somehow get you in touch with Sir Knight Rasmussen-Bates, right? I could keep saying I love doing this. This was wonderful. This is I'm so glad I could finally get in touch with the Knights of the Maccabees. And like I said, as a Canadian, it makes me very proud to do this, right? Because they started not too far from where I grew up, right? But that's all I have time for today, brothers and sisters. But before I go, I want to remind you that this podcast is available on both YouTube and Spreaker. Please share, like, and subscribe when viewing Points of Light Radio on YouTube. You can follow Points of Light Radio on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Points of Light Radio. My Twitter handle is at PO Light Radio. You can see the link to my Spotify channel as well as my Points of Light Radio store. Brothers and sisters, it has been a pleasure fellowshipping with you today. But until we meet again, just step into the light.